The look on Derek's face when that flatbed rolled into the family reunion. I'll carry that image to my grave, and I'll smile every single time I think about it. He was standing there in his pressed khaki shorts and his $200 polo shirt, beer in hand, surrounded by my relatives. He'd just finished his little performance, the one where he gestures toward my workshop with that smirk of his. The one where he says, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Somebody should tell Earl that heap of rust isn't going to fix itself." How long's it been sitting there now? 10 years? 12? Polite laughter. A few uncomfortable shuffles. My daughter Melissa, my only child, the girl I raised after her mother passed, she was standing right next to him. She didn't laugh, but she didn't say anything either. That hurt more than his words ever could. Before I continue, you need to understand something. This isn't a story about a truck. This is a story about respect, about assumptions, about a man who thought he could walk into my family, into my home, into my daughter's life, and take whatever he wanted, while treating me like I was already dead and buried. He thought I was just some old fool in overalls. He thought wrong. So when that flatbed came down the gravel drive, when Derek saw the logo on the side of the transport truck, when he watched two professionals in white gloves step out and start preparing the loading equipment, I didn't say a word. I just sipped my lemonade, and I watched his face change. First it was confusion, then recognition, then something I'd been waiting 6 years to see. Fear, pure, undiluted fear. Because Derek Callahan finally understood something that afternoon, something he should have figured out a long time ago. I'm not the fool in this story. He is. Let me tell you how we got here. That flatbed wasn't from some local towing company. It wasn't coming to haul away junk. The transport was from a specialty automotive logistics firm out of California, the kind that moves vehicles worth more than most people's houses, the kind that shows up at Barrett-Jackson and Macomb and Pebble Beach. The logo on the side said, "Collector Car Transit, White Glove Service since 1987. Derek recognized it. Of course he did. For all his talk about my worthless hobbies, he'd spent enough time watching classic car auctions on television, drooling over vehicles he couldn't afford. He knew exactly what that transport meant. But here's the thing. That wasn't even the reveal. The transport was just the beginning. What came next? What happened over the following 48 hours? That's what this story is really about. Because the truck Derek had been mocking for 6 years wasn't just valuable, it was evidence. And when he realized what was actually happening, when he understood what I'd been quietly building while he called me a senile old man behind my back, his whole carefully constructed world came crashing down. The affair, the debts, the forged documents, the scheme to have me declared mentally incompetent, all of it. Exposed in front of my entire family. At the reunion, he'd insisted on hosting at my property because he wanted to show everyone how far we've come. His words. The irony still makes me chuckle. That's when I realized something important. Something I want you to remember as you hear this story. The people who underestimate you are handing you a gift. They're telling you exactly who they are. They're showing you their weakness. Derek's weakness was his arrogance, his assumption that a 67-year-old man in work boots couldn't possibly be smarter than him. He was wrong. And by the time that flatbed pulled away from my property, with my 1967 Chevrolet C10 secured on the back, bound for an auction where it would sell for more money than Derek made in 3 years, he finally knew it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. Let me tell you about the day I first met my son-in-law, and let me tell you about the first lie he ever told me. My name is Earl Raymond Dawson. I'm 67 years old. I live on the same 40-acre property in Williamson County, Tennessee, where I was born. This land has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather bought it in 1902 with money he'd saved working the railroad. He built a small cabin, cleared fields, started a farm. My grandfather expanded it. My father maintained it, and now it's mine. 40 acres doesn't sound like much these days, but in Williamson County, 20 minutes south of Nashville, land values have exploded. Developers have been circling for years, offering prices that would have seemed impossible when I was young. I've never been interested in selling. This isn't just property to me. It's history. It's memory. It's the place where I learned to walk, where I married my wife, where I raised my daughter, where I buried my parents. You can't put a price on that. But some people try anyway. For 35 years, I worked as a mechanical engineer for one of the big 3 automakers, not on the assembly line, though I started there summer of 1975, fresh out of high school. I worked my way up, got my engineering degree at night while running a press during the day. By the time I was 40, I was leading a team of 12 engineers specializing in drivetrain efficiency. I hold 4 patents. 2 of them are still generating licensing revenue. Most people don't know that about me. I don't talk about it. Never saw the point in bragging about accomplishments that happened decades ago. But here's what those patents mean in practical terms. Every year, I receive licensing fees from 2 major automotive manufacturers. The amounts vary depending on production volumes, but the average over the past 10 years has been about $60,000 annually. $60,000 a year. Just for work I did in my 40s. Add that to my pension, my Social Security, and the investments Linda and I built over 40 years of marriage, and you'd find that Earl Dawson, the old man in overalls who drives a rusty pickup and grows tomatoes in his backyard, is worth considerably more than he appears. But you wouldn't know any of that from looking at me. I wear the same Carhartt jacket I've had for 15 years. I drive a 2008 F-150 with 180,000 miles on it. I grow tomatoes in the summer and spend my winters in my workshop, restoring vehicles that most people would call junk. My wife Linda called it my meditation. She understood. Linda passed 8 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. We had 41 years together. Not nearly enough. The diagnosis came in March. She was gone by September. 6 months of watching the woman I loved fade away, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but memories and an empty space in the bed beside me. After she died, I pulled back from the world. Not in a sad way. Not entirely. More like a settling. I had my property, my shop, my projects. I had my daughter Melissa, who lived 20 minutes away. I had Sunday dinners and occasional phone calls and a quiet life that suited me just fine. I wasn't rich by Derek's standards, but I wasn't hurting either. The patents brought in $60,000. My pension added another $42,000. Social Security contributed another $28,000. And my investment portfolio, modest by Wall Street standards, but carefully managed over 4 decades, generated enough dividend income to cover most of my basic expenses. Comfortable, that's the word. I was comfortable, and I was careful. That's something people don't understand about men like me. We don't talk about money. We don't flash it around. We learned from our parents and grandparents that you keep your business to yourself. My father used to say, "The man who brags about his wallet is the man who will lose it." I never forgot that. So when Derek Callahan came into our lives, when he started dating my daughter 6 years ago, he made assumptions. The same assumptions everyone makes when they see an old man in overalls living on a farm. He assumed I was poor. He assumed I was simple. He assumed he was smarter than me. The first time I met him, it was a Sunday in late September. Melissa had called ahead. "Dad, I'm bringing someone to dinner. Someone special. Please be nice. Please be nice." That told me everything I needed to know about how she expected me to react. They pulled up in a BMW. Leased, I found out later, but it looked impressive enough in my gravel driveway. Derek stepped out first, adjusting his jacket, looking around at my property the way a real estate appraiser looks at a teardown. He was 32 then. Good-looking in that generic way that photographs well. Dark hair, careful smile, the kind of handshake that's been practiced in front of a mirror. "Mr. Dawson," he said. "Derek Callahan. It's an honor to finally meet you. Melissa talks about you all the time. Call me Earl." Earl. He said it like he was trying it on for size. "Beautiful property, sir. Must be what, 50, 60 acres? 40. Still, good chunk of land. Hard to find places like this anymore, especially this close to Nashville. Development pressure must be intense." I noticed how quickly he'd moved to real estate, how naturally he'd started calculating. "We manage," I said. "I bet you do." He glanced toward my workshop. The main doors were closed, but you could see the outbuildings, the equipment, the general sense of organized clutter that comes from decades of projects. "Melissa mentioned you're into cars. Classic restoration, right?" "Something like that." "That's fantastic. Real craftsmanship. You don't see that much anymore." He paused, and I watched him decide whether to say what he was thinking. He decided yes. "You ever think about selling?" "Not the property, I mean the project cars. I'm in real estate development, but I know people in the collector market. Might be able to connect you with some buyers." That was it. That was the first thing he said to me, essentially. "Hello, nice to meet you. Want to sell your family's land? Want to sell your life's work?" I should have known right then. But Melissa was standing next to him, and she was smiling, and she looked happy in a way I hadn't seen since her mother died. So I kept my mouth shut. I said something polite, something about not being interested, and I filed that moment away in the back of my mind. First anomaly. Dinner that evening was pleasant enough. Melissa did most of the talking. She was nervous. I could tell by the way she kept touching her hair, the way she laughed a little too quickly at Derek's jokes. She wanted this to go well. She wanted me to like him. Derek played his part perfectly. Complimentary about the food, interested in my stories about working at the plant, attentive to Melissa in all the right ways, refilling her water glass, touching her shoulder, asking her opinion. But I noticed things. The way his eyes drifted to the family photographs on the mantel, lingering on the older ones, the ones that suggested history and permanence. The way he steered conversations back to property values and development opportunities, no matter where they started. The way he answered questions about his own background, with practiced vagueness. "Oh, I grew up in Atlanta. Came to Nashville for opportunity. The real estate market here is incredible." No mention of family, no mention of education, no specifics about his business beyond development and investors. I didn't push. It wasn't my place. Melissa was a grown woman, 31 years old, capable of making her own decisions. But I watched. I listened. I remembered. After dinner, while Melissa was in the kitchen cleaning up, Derek and I sat on the front porch. "Beautiful evening," he said. "Usually is this time of year." He sipped his beer, some craft IPA I'd bought specially because Melissa said he was into that sort of thing. "I want you to know," he said, I really care about your daughter. She's special, different from other women I've dated. She is. I know this is probably moving fast for you, meeting the boyfriend, all that. But I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you my intentions are good. He turned to face me directly. I'm going to take care of her, Earl. That's a promise. I studied him for a long moment. There's a test I learned years ago. When someone makes a promise, watch their eyes. If they look at you steadily, they might be telling the truth. If they look away, they're probably lying. But there's a third option. Some people have learned to look you right in the eye while lying. They've practiced it, perfected it. They know that steady eye contact conveys sincerity, so they use it deliberately, cynically, as a tool. Derek looked me right in the eye, and I felt absolutely nothing. No warmth, no sincerity, no connection, just a man performing a role. I appreciate that, I said, and I filed that moment away too. Second anomaly. Derek Callahan presented himself as a successful real estate developer. He had business cards, he had a website, he had a leased BMW and a rented condo in a nice part of Nashville. He talked constantly about his projects and his investors and his vision. The projects were always vague. The investors were never named. The vision shifted depending on who he was talking to. Melissa was 31 when they met. She'd been through a rough few years, a broken engagement, a job loss, a stretch of depression after her mother died. She was vulnerable, looking for stability. Derek swept in like he had all the answers. He was confident, successful, certain about the future. Everything Melissa felt uncertain about, Derek seemed to have figured out. Within 3 months, they were exclusive. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within a year, they were married. I paid for the wedding, $42,000. That's not a number I throw around lightly. It's a significant amount of money. But Melissa wanted a nice wedding, and Linda wasn't there to help plan it, and I couldn't bring myself to add financial stress to what should have been a happy time. So I wrote the checks. Derek's family contributed nothing. When I asked Melissa about it, gently, not wanting to cause problems, she explained that Derek's parents were difficult people, that he'd been estranged from them for years, that it was a painful subject he didn't like to discuss. I accepted that explanation at the time. Later, I would learn that Derek's parents weren't difficult. They were tired. Tired of bailing him out, tired of funding his schemes, tired of watching him charm and manipulate his way through life, leaving wreckage behind him. They'd cut him off because they had to, because every dollar they gave him disappeared into some new project that never materialized, some new investment that never paid off, some new promise that never came true. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that my daughter was getting married, and her fiancé's family wouldn't be there, and I was footing the entire bill. I filed that away too. The wedding was beautiful. June afternoon. Outdoor ceremony. 200 guests. Melissa wore her mother's dress, altered to fit. When I walked her down the aisle, I thought about Linda, about how much she would have loved this moment, about all the moments she was missing. I gave a toast, talked about love and hope and new beginnings, and I watched Derek throughout the reception, watched him work the room, shake hands, slap backs, charm elderly relatives and flirt harmlessly with young cousins. He was good at it, natural, the kind of social ease that can't be taught. But every now and then, when he thought no one was looking, his face would go blank. Just for a second, the smile would disappear, and something cold would flicker through his eyes. Then someone would approach him, and the warmth would snap back on like a light switch. I was probably the only person at that wedding who noticed. The first year of their marriage, things seemed fine. Melissa was happy, or seemed happy. She talked about Derek's business prospects, about their plans for the future, about starting a family eventually. Derek bought a house, a new construction in a subdivision south of Nashville. Big place. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a 3-car garage. The kind of house that screams, "I've made it," to everyone driving past. Except I noticed something at the closing. I was there because Melissa asked me to come. She was nervous about the paperwork. Derek was annoyed about that. I could see it in the tension around his jaw. But he agreed. The closing took place at a title company in Franklin. Standard process. Documents spread across a conference table. Signatures required on dozens of pages. But when the closing documents came out, Derek was the only one signing. Melissa's name wasn't on the deed. I watched her face as the title agent explained the documents. She seemed confused, glanced at Derek. "I thought we were both..." "Babe, we talked about this." Derek's voice was smooth, reassuring. "It's just simpler to keep the business separate from the personal. Tax purposes, asset protection. If anything ever happens with one of my projects, this way the house is shielded." "Oh, right. You did mention that." But she hadn't remembered him mentioning it. I could tell from her expression. This was news to her. I didn't say anything. After the closing, I pulled Derek aside. "Quick question," I said. "About the deed." "Sure, Earl. What's up?" "Melissa's not on it." "Right. Like I said, asset protection, standard practice." "Standard practice for who?" Something flickered in his eyes, just for a second. "For developers, people with business exposure. It's complicated, Earl. Legal stuff. I wouldn't expect you to understand." He smiled, patted my shoulder. "Don't worry about it. I've got everything under control." And he walked away. I stood there, watching him go, feeling something settle in my gut. Something wrong. Over the next 5 years, Derek's behavior established a pattern. At every family gathering, he found ways to diminish me. Sometimes it was subtle, a comment about my retirement projects, or a joke about my vintage wardrobe. Sometimes it was less subtle. Thanksgiving, 4 years ago. We're sitting around the table. Me, Melissa, Derek, my sister-in-law Margaret, a few cousins. Derek's telling a story about one of his clients. "This old guy," he says, "must have been 80, living in a house worth $500,000, but he's got newspapers stacked to the ceiling, cat smell everywhere. Hasn't updated anything since 1970. He shakes his head, like this is the saddest thing he's ever seen. His kids had to step in, get a conservatorship, take over his finances. The guy didn't even realize he was living in squalor. He looked around the table, made eye contact with everyone. Then he looked at me. Some people just can't admit when they need help," he said. "Pride, I guess. Sad, really." The table went quiet. Margaret cleared her throat. Someone changed the subject. But I understood what had just happened. Derek was planting seeds, suggesting that I was like that old man, declining, out of touch, unable to manage my own affairs. I didn't respond. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but she didn't defend me. That pattern repeated, over and over. Derek would make his little comments. Melissa would stay silent, and I would absorb it. Because what was the alternative? Making a scene? Driving my daughter away? I chose peace, or what I thought was peace. Really, I was just gathering information, because here's what Derek didn't know. Every time he dismissed me, every time he underestimated me, He revealed something about himself, his insecurities, his assumptions, his blind spots, and I paid attention. Christmas, 3 years ago. Derek gave me a gift. A book called Simplifying Your Senior Years, A Guide to Downsizing and Estate Planning. He presented it with a straight face. Thought this might be useful, Earl. Lots of good information about making things easier as we get older. Melissa winced. Derek, I'm not sure that's... What? It's practical. Everyone needs to think about this stuff eventually. I looked at the book, at the cover, which featured a smiling elderly couple standing in front of a sold sign. Thank you, Derek, I said. Very thoughtful. He nodded, satisfied. I put the book aside, never opened it, but I kept it. Evidence. The truck. Let me tell you about the truck. My 1967 Chevrolet C10 stepside came into my possession in 1989. I was 42 years old, still working at the plant, still raising Melissa, still building a life with Linda. I bought it from the original owner, an elderly farmer named Harold Briggs, who lived 3 counties over. He'd purchased it new in '67 and driven it for 22 years before his health failed and he couldn't work anymore. I found out about the truck through a friend of a friend. Someone mentioned that old Harold was selling his place, and there was a pickup in the barn that might be worth looking at. I drove out on a Saturday morning, found Harold sitting on his porch, looking out over fields he could no longer work. Come about the truck? He asked. If it's still available. He led me to the barn, pulled back the door, and there it was. A 1967 C10 stepside, marina blue, original paint, faded but intact. Original interior, worn but complete. Sitting on flat tires, covered in dust, waiting. I walked around it slowly, checked the VIN, looked under the hood, crawled underneath to examine the frame. What do you think? Harold asked. I think she needs work. She does. More work than I can do anymore. He paused. My wife and I, we bought that truck the year we got married. Drove it everywhere. Used it for the farm, for hauling, for Sunday drives. After she passed, I just couldn't bring myself to work on it anymore. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans. How much are you asking? $4,000. That fair? It was more than fair. Even in 1989, even in rough condition, a numbers matching 67 C10 was worth more than that. I'll give you 5, I said. Harold looked at me for a long moment. So why? Because some things are worth more than their market value. He nodded slowly. Take care of her, he said. She's got stories left to tell. I didn't start seriously restoring the truck until after Linda died. For 19 years, it sat in my workshop. I'd work on it occasionally, replacing a part here, cleaning a component there. But it was never a priority. Life kept getting in the way. Then Linda was gone, and suddenly I had all the time in the world. The truck became my project, my therapy, my way of keeping busy while I processed my grief. I worked slowly, deliberately. I sourced correct parts from specialists across the country. I documented everything. Every bolt, every bracket, every decal and badge. The paint was the original Marina Blue. I had it color-matched perfectly by a specialist in California who dealt exclusively with classic Chevrolet colors. The interior was restored to factory specifications down to the seat stitching. I found an upholstery shop in North Carolina that specialized in period-correct materials. The engine was rebuilt by a machinist I'd worked with decades ago. Balanced, detailed. Brought back to factory specifications with modern reliability improvements that didn't affect authenticity. This wasn't a weekend project slapped together in a garage. This was a professional-level restoration that took me 7 years to complete. And I told no one. Not Derek. Not Melissa. Not my neighbors or my extended family. The truck sat in my workshop, hidden under a tarp, looking like just another piece of junk to anyone who glanced through the window. That was intentional. Because I knew something that Derek didn't. A 1967 C10 stepside, numbers-matching frame-off restoration, marina blue in Concours condition, worth between $200,000 and $300,000 at auction. Possibly more. The collector truck market had exploded in recent years. What was once a niche hobby had become a serious investment category. Trucks that sold for $20,000 a decade ago were now fetching 6 figures, and mine was special. Numbers matching meant all the major components, engine, transmission, rear end, had serial numbers that corresponded to the original build documentation. The truck was complete, authentic, original. The documentation I'd assembled added another layer of value. I had the original window sticker, the build sheet which I'd found folded up behind the dashboard during disassembly, service records from Harold Briggs, going back to 1968, photographs of the truck throughout its life. This kind of provenance is gold in the collector world. It proves authenticity. It tells a story. It connects the vehicle to real people and real history. I'd had the truck appraised 6 months before the reunion, quietly, by a specialist from California who flew in specifically for the evaluation. His name was Robert Whitfield. He'd been in the collector car business for 30 years. He'd seen everything. He spent 4 hours examining my truck, checking documentation, taking photographs, making notes. When he was finished, he sat down across from me at my kitchen table. "Mr. Dawson," he said, "this is exceptional work." "Thank you. I don't say that lightly. I've seen hundreds of restorations. Most of them have compromises, wrong parts, incorrect finishes, documentation gaps. Yours has none of that." He slid a paper across the table. "My written estimate is $275,000. I looked at the number. "My verbal estimate," he continued, "is higher. At the right auction, with the right buyers in the room, you might see 300, maybe more. The C10 market is very strong right now, and your truck is one of the best examples I've encountered. $300,000. For a truck Derek had been mocking as that pile of rust in Earl's barn for 6 years. But here's the thing. I wasn't planning to sell it. Not originally. The truck was for Melissa. I'd intended to leave it to her in my will, along with the rest of my estate. A nest egg, security, something her husband couldn't touch because it would be her separate property, inherited, not marital. I had it all planned out. And then I found the documents. 6 months before the reunion, in January, I received a phone call. I was in my workshop, working on final details of the truck restoration, when my phone rang. Unfamiliar number. Nashville area code. I almost didn't answer. These days, most unknown calls are spam. Robot voices trying to sell extended warranties or convince you that you're about to be arrested by the IRS. But something made me pick up. "Is this Earl Dawson?" "Who's asking?" "Mr. Dawson, my name is Patricia Feldman. I'm an attorney here in Nashville. I'm calling as a courtesy. Do you have a moment?" I set down my wrench. "Go ahead." "I'm obligated to inform you that my office has received an inquiry regarding the process for establishing conservatorship over an elderly individual. The inquiry referenced you by name." I sat down slowly. "Conservatorship." "Yes, sir. Someone contacted my office asking about the legal requirements for having an elderly family member declared mentally incompetent and placed under conservatorship. Who made the inquiry? I can't disclose that. Attorney-client privilege applies even to preliminary consultations. But I can tell you that I declined to take the case. Why? Because I found the circumstances questionable. The individual didn't seem to have legitimate grounds. There was no evidence of mental decline or inability to manage affairs. The inquiry felt opportunistic. But you can't tell me who it was. No. But I wanted you to know, because there's a good chance they'll find another attorney who's less particular. Not everyone in my profession has the same ethical standards. I was quiet for a long moment. Miss Feldman, why are you telling me this? She paused. Because I've seen what conservatorship abuse looks like. I've seen families torn apart by greedy relatives who use the legal system to steal from vulnerable people. And I've seen it happen to people who weren't vulnerable at all, who were just unlucky enough to trust the wrong person. You think that's what's happening here? I think you should be prepared. Talk to your own attorney. Review your estate planning. Make sure your affairs are in order and your wishes are clearly documented. I thanked her, asked for her contact information in case I needed a lawyer myself. She gave it to me. And then I sat in my workshop for a very long time thinking. Conservatorship. Someone was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. Someone wanted control of my assets, my property, my life. There was only one person who would benefit from that. I'd been denying it for years, making excuses, telling myself that Derek was just arrogant, not malicious, that his comments about my age and my hobbies were thoughtless, not calculated. But this was different. This was a legal maneuver, a strategic move, something that required planning and research and the willingness to use the court system as a weapon. This was war, and I hadn't even known we were fighting. I didn't want to believe it. That night I sat on my porch and watched the stars and tried to convince myself there could be other explanations. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone had the wrong Earl Dawson. Maybe Patricia Feldman had misunderstood the inquiry. Maybe it wasn't Derek at all. But even as I constructed these alternatives, I knew they were fantasy. The pieces fit too perfectly. The comments about my mental state. The gift book about simplifying your senior years. The constant suggestions that I couldn't manage on my own. Derek had been laying groundwork for years, and I'd been too blind or too hopeful to see it. That realization hurt more than I expected. Not because of Derek. He was what he was. A predator. A schemer. Someone who saw opportunity in other people's vulnerability. It hurt because of Melissa. My daughter had married this man, had built a life with him, had defended him, quietly, every time I raised concerns. Did she know what he was planning? Was she part of it? I couldn't let myself believe that. Not yet. But I couldn't dismiss the possibility either. I needed evidence, I needed proof, and I needed to be very, very careful about how I got it. The next morning, I made a phone call. Walter Chen was an old friend. We'd worked together at the automaker for 20 years before he retired and started his own private investigation firm. Walter was good at what he did. Thorough, discreet, the kind of investigator who found things other people missed because he had the patience to look in places no one else thought to check. "Earl," he said when he answered, "Been a while? Everything okay?" "Not really." I told him everything. The phone call from Patricia Feldman, the pattern of comments from Derek over the years, my suspicions. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Your son-in-law. That's my suspicion, but I need to know for sure. And if it is him? I'd thought about this. All night I'd thought about it. Then I need to know everything. His finances, his business, his secrets, everything. That's a significant undertaking, Earl. It's going to cost money, take time, and there's always the risk that you won't like what you find. I understand. You're sure about this? I thought about Melissa, about the life she thought she had, about what would happen if I was wrong, or if I was right. I'm sure. Then I'll start tomorrow. But Earl. Yeah? Whatever I find, whatever the truth turns out to be, you have to be prepared to act on it. Information is useless if you're not willing to use it. I understand. I hope so. I'll be in touch. Over the next 5 months, Walter compiled a file that grew thicker by the week. He started with public records, business filings, court documents, property records, the kind of information anyone could find if they knew where to look. The first report arrived in early February. Derek Callahan's real estate development company was a shell. On paper, it looked legitimate. Callahan Development LLC, registered in Tennessee, active status. But when Walter dug deeper, he found almost nothing behind the facade. No completed projects, no properties under development, no significant assets. Derek had one active project, a condo conversion in a sketchy neighborhood on the east side of Nashville. The building had been purchased 3 years ago with money from investors who were never clearly identified. Since then, the project had stalled due to permit issues, code violations, and lawsuits from contractors who claimed they hadn't been paid. The permits had expired. The lawsuits were ongoing. The building sat empty, deteriorating, accumulating fines. This was Derek's empire. This was the development business he bragged about at family gatherings. A single failing project and a mountain of legal problems. But that wasn't the worst of it. In March, Walter discovered the credit cards, 7 of them. All in Derek's name, all maxed out, total debt, $143,000. I sat in my kitchen, looking at the statements Walter had obtained, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. $143,000 in credit card debt alone. Some of the charges were ordinary: groceries, gas, restaurant meals, but others were not. Hotels, weekend trips, dinners at restaurants that weren't in Nashville. Charges that occurred when Derek was supposedly traveling for business. Charges that appeared on cards Melissa didn't know existed. I called Walter. "These hotels," I said, "these out-of-town expenses, what are we looking at?" "I'm still investigating, but the pattern suggests he's not traveling alone." My stomach dropped. "You think there's someone else?" "I think it's possible, maybe likely, but I need more evidence before I can say for sure." Get it. The financial picture got worse the deeper Walter dug. Derek's income was almost non-existent. His development company generated no revenue. His only documented employment was a part-time consulting arrangement with another real estate firm. An arrangement that paid him about $20,000 a year. $20,000. That was his actual income. Meanwhile, his lifestyle suggested someone making 10 times that amount. The leased BMW, the expensive clothes, the dinners at high-end restaurants, the house, that 4-bedroom, 3-bath showpiece in the fancy subdivision. How is he funding all of it? Walter found the answer in early April. Melissa. My daughter's salary as a marketing manager, about $75,000 a year, was being systematically drained. Joint accounts that should have held savings were nearly empty. Automatic transfers moved money from Melissa's paycheck to accounts she didn't seem to know about. Derek was living off his wife, using her income to fund his lifestyle while his business produced nothing but debt and legal problems. And Melissa either didn't know or didn't want to know. The affair. I didn't want to find it. I prayed I was wrong. But in mid-April, Walter sent me a manila envelope marked confidential. Inside were photographs. Derek and a woman. Late 20s, blonde, attractive, walking into a hotel in Memphis, coming out the next morning, different day, different hotel, same woman, different city, Atlanta, same pattern, arriving together, leaving together. The body language of people who knew each other intimately, multiple occasions, multiple hotels, a relationship. Her name was Kaylee Morrison. She worked as an administrative assistant at one of Derek's failed development projects. They'd been seeing each other for at least 2 years. 2 years. While he was married to my daughter. While he was draining her savings. While he was laying groundwork to have me declared incompetent. I sat in my workshop, looking at those photographs, and I cried. Not for myself, for my daughter. For the life she thought she had. For the trust she'd given to a man who didn't deserve it. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I stayed calm. I needed proof. More proof. Better proof. Undeniable proof. Because I knew how this would go. Derek was a manipulator, a smooth talker. If I went to Melissa with accusations and suspicions, he'd deny everything. He'd twist it around. He'd make me look like a jealous old man who never liked him. He'd use my own love for my daughter against me. I couldn't let that happen. So I kept gathering evidence. In early May, Walter discovered something that changed the scope of the investigation. I was looking at their house, he said when he called. The property records. Something didn't add up. What do you mean? When they bought the place, the purchase price was $420,000. Derek put down about $80,000 and financed the rest with a conventional mortgage. Okay. But 2 years ago, he opened a home equity line of credit, drew down $200,000 against the property. I did the math quickly. That's more than the equity he had. Right. The house was appraised at $550,000 for the HELOC application. Inflated, probably, but not unusually so for this market. The point is, he borrowed $200,000 against the house. What happened to the money? Gone. Near as I can tell, it went into the failing condo project, the credit cards, and general living expenses. I felt sick. So the house is leveraged to the breaking point. Essentially, yes. Between the original mortgage and the HELOC, they owe almost as much as the house is worth. If property values drop, or if he misses payments, they could lose everything. Does Melissa know? Walter hesitated. I don't think so. The HELOC paperwork lists her as a co-applicant, but... But what? Earl, I had a handwriting analyst look at the signature. It's a forgery. The room seemed to tilt. You're saying he forged her signature. I'm saying the signature on the HELOC application doesn't match Melissa's known signature samples. The handwriting is similar. He clearly studied her signature. But there are inconsistencies, too many to be natural variation. He forged her signature to borrow $200,000 against their house. That's what the evidence suggests, yes. I sat down heavily. That's fraud. Yes. That's a felony. Yes. I was quiet for a long moment. What else, Walter? What else has he done? I'm still looking, but Earl, this is bad, really bad. Whatever you're planning, you need to move carefully. Derek isn't just a con artist. He's a desperate con artist, and desperate people do desperate things. The lien. Walter found it in late May, 3 weeks before the reunion. He called me at 7 in the morning. "Earl, I need you to come to my office, now." I drove into Nashville. The traffic was light. The morning was beautiful. None of it registered. Walter was waiting with coffee and a folder I hadn't seen before. "My contact at the county clerk's office flagged something," he said. "A filing from 3 weeks ago. I don't know how I missed it." He slid the folder across his desk. I opened it. Inside was a lien document. Someone had filed a lien against my property, my family's farm, the 40 acres I'd lived on my entire life. The claimant, Callahan Development, LLC, the alleged debt, services rendered, and materials provided for property improvement. The amount, $175,000. I looked up at Walter. "This is fraud," I said. "Yes. He's never done any work on my property. He's never provided any materials. I've never hired him for anything. This is completely fabricated." "Yes." I looked at the signature line on the filing. Derek Callahan, managing member. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from something else. "He's trying to force a sale," I said slowly. "If he can't get conservatorship, he'll use a fake lien to encumber the property. Make it impossible for me to sell without settling his debt. Pressure me into giving up." Walter nodded. "That's my read too. It's a common tactic among financial predators. File a fraudulent lien, then use it as leverage. Even if the lien is eventually dismissed, the legal process takes time and money. Most victims settle rather than fight. He thinks I'll just pay him off. He thinks you're an easy target, old, alone, not sophisticated enough to challenge him." I felt something cold settle in my chest. He's wrong. That night, I made my decision. I sat on my porch, looking out over the property my great-grandfather had bought more than a century ago. The fields, the trees, the old barn, the workshop, everything Derek wanted to take from me, everything he'd been scheming to steal for years. I thought about the evidence Walter had gathered, the debts, the affair, the forged documents, the fraudulent lien. I thought about Melissa, about the life she believed she had, about the man she thought she'd married, and I thought about the family reunion. Derek had been pushing for months to have it at my place. He wanted to show the family what we've built together. He wanted to make some kind of announcement about opportunities for the Dawson family. He wanted to stand on my land, surrounded by my relatives, and present himself as the visionary leader who would take us all into the future. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I made a plan. The next morning, I called Patricia Feldman. "Ms. Feldman, this is Earl Dawson. We spoke a few months ago." "Mr. Dawson, yes, I remember. How are you?" "I need a lawyer." "I suspected you might." I told her everything. The investigation, the evidence, the fraudulent lien. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Dawson, you have a strong case. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, identity theft. The conservatorship inquiry alone suggests criminal intent." "I know." "Do you want to press charges?" "Eventually. But first, I want to protect my daughter." "How do you mean?" "Derek is going to prison. That's inevitable now. But when he goes down, he's going to try to take Melissa with him. He'll claim she knew about everything. He'll implicate her in the fraud. He'll use her as a bargaining chip." "That's possible. I need to make sure she's protected, separate her assets, document her lack of involvement, give her a way out that doesn't destroy her life." Patricia was quiet for a moment. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for months. What do you have in mind? I want to restructure my estate, create a trust that protects everything, the property, the investments, the patent income, something Derek can't touch, something that goes directly to Melissa, outside of any marital property. That's possible, but it will take time. And if your daughter is still married to him when you pass, she won't be. I'm going to make sure of that. How? The family reunion is in 3 weeks. Derek's planning to use it as a platform for some kind of announcement. Instead, I'm going to use it as an exposure. Another pause. You're going to confront him publicly. I'm going to show everyone who he really is, in front of the whole family, with evidence they can't deny. That's dramatic. It's necessary. Derek is a manipulator. If I confront him privately, he'll spin it. Gaslight Melissa. Make me look like the bad guy. But if I do it publicly, with witnesses, with proof, he won't be able to escape. And your daughter? I took a deep breath. She'll be hurt. There's no way around that, but she needs to know the truth, and she needs to hear it in a way that Derek can't twist. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. All right, Mr. Dawson, I'll help you, but we need to do this carefully. Document everything. Prepare for his counterattack. Make sure your evidence is bulletproof. I've been preparing for months. Then let's finish the job. Patricia and I met 3 times over the next 2 weeks. She drew up the documents. A living trust with Melissa as the sole beneficiary. Ironclad protections. Specific provisions that classified all inherited assets as separate property under Tennessee law. The trust included everything: the property, the investments, the patent income. Even the truck, which I listed at its appraised value of $275,000. Patricia also helped me draft a formal response to Derek's fraudulent lien. It was a masterpiece of legal precision. Documented the fraud, demanded retraction, outlined the criminal penalties for filing false liens. We didn't file it. Not yet. I wanted to wait until after the reunion. I wanted Derek to feel safe, confident, untouchable. Then I wanted to watch his face when he realized he wasn't. Third objective, the affair. This was the hardest part. I had the photographs. I had hotel records. I had text messages that Walter had obtained through methods I chose not to ask about. But I needed more. I needed Kaylee Morrison. Walter arranged a meeting. Not with me, that would have been too suspicious. With a woman named Susan Grant, a former paralegal who now worked for Walter's firm. Susan was 62 years old, grandmotherly, trustworthy, the kind of person you'd tell your secrets to without thinking twice. She approached Kaylee at a coffee shop near her apartment in Nashville, introduced herself, explained that she was working on behalf of a client who had evidence of Derek Callahan's misconduct. "I'm not asking you to betray anyone," Susan said. "I'm just asking you to consider your own position. When this comes out, and it will come out, do you want to be the last person to know the truth, or do you want to protect yourself?" Kaylee was 28 years old. She'd been involved with Derek for over 2 years. He'd promised her things: a future, a life together. He'd also lied to her. He'd told her he was separated from his wife, that the divorce was imminent, that as soon as his business situation stabilized, they'd be together publicly. Susan showed her photographs of Derek and Melissa at a charity gala 2 months earlier, holding hands, smiling for the camera, looking very much like a happily married couple. Kaylee's face went pale. "He told me they were separated," she whispered. "They're not. He said the divorce papers were already filed." They're not. Kaylee was quiet for a long moment. Then she started to cry, and then she talked. The statement Kaylee provided was devastating. Derek had been using her apartment as a second address, having certain mail delivered there, credit card statements, bank notices, court documents, things he didn't want Melissa to see. Kaylee had copies. She also had text messages, hundreds of them, including several where Derek discussed his plans for the future. One message stood out. Derek to Kaylee, February 15th, 10:47 p.m. Once I have control of his assets, we're set. The property alone is worth $2 million, plus whatever else the old fool is hiding. Just have to get the paperwork done. Be patient, baby. Our time is coming. That message was time-stamped 3 weeks before Patricia Feldman's phone call, 3 weeks before the conservatorship inquiry. I had him. Fourth objective: witnesses. I couldn't do this alone. I needed people I could trust, people who would be present at the reunion and could observe what happened. I started with Margaret, my sister-in-law, Linda's older sister. Margaret was 71 and sharp as a tack. She'd never liked Derek. She'd told me so privately, multiple times. There's something off about that man, she'd said at the wedding. I don't trust him. I'd dismissed her concerns then, chalked it up to protective instincts, excessive caution. I wasn't going to dismiss them now. I drove to her house in Franklin. She lived alone, same as me, in the house she'd shared with her husband before he passed. We sat on her screened porch, drinking sweet tea, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Her face grew progressively grimmer as I laid out the evidence. The debts, the fraud, the affair, the conservatorship scheme. When I finished, she sat very still for a long moment. Then she said, I knew it. You knew. Not the details, but I knew something was wrong. The way he looked at people, the way he talked about money, the way he treated you. She shook her head. I should have said something. Should have pushed harder. You tried. I didn't listen. What do you need from me? I need you at the reunion. I need you to watch. And when the time comes, I need you to be there for Melissa. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'll be there. And Earl? Yeah? Whatever happens, whatever comes out, you're doing the right thing. Melissa needs to know the truth, even if it hurts. Next, I contacted my nephew Thomas. He was 35, a corporate attorney in Nashville. Good head on his shoulders, discreet, the kind of person who knew how to keep information confidential. I didn't tell him everything. I just told him I was concerned about some legal matters involving my property and my son-in-law, that I had documentation, that I might need a witness. Thomas didn't ask questions. Uncle Earl, he said, if you need me there, I'll be there. You might see some things that are uncomfortable. I've been in courtrooms. I can handle uncomfortable. This might be different. This involves family. Family is family. Whatever you need, I'm with you. I also reached out to Raymond, my cousin on my father's side. Raymond was 63, built like a linebacker, with hands like catcher's mitts from 30 years of construction work. He'd known me since we were children, trusted me implicitly. Raymond, I said when I called him, I need a favor. Name it. At the reunion, things might get tense. I might need someone to maintain order. Maintain order? Make sure nobody does anything stupid. Raymond was quiet for a moment. This about Derek? Maybe. Good. Never liked that guy. Something about his eyes. You'll be there? Wouldn't miss it. The final piece. The transport. Robert Whitfield coordinated with Collector Car Transit. the specialty logistics company that handled high-value vehicles. "The auction in Atlanta is confirmed," he told me. "Your truck is in the catalog. Starting bid is $250,000. Good. I've arranged for transport on July 16th. They'll arrive mid-afternoon to load the vehicle." I thought about the reunion, about Derek's planned speech, about the moment he'd chosen to announce his vision for my property. "Can you specify a time? Around 3 o'clock? Any particular reason?" "Just timing." Robert didn't push. 3 o'clock it is. The week before the reunion, Walter delivered his final report. A thick folder, hundreds of pages, the complete story of Derek Callahan's schemes, financial records, credit reports, bank statements, hotel receipts, photographs, dozens of them. Derek and Kaylee in various cities, arriving at hotels, leaving the next morning, witness statements. From contractors Derek had stiffed, from former business partners who'd been burned, from Kaylee Morrison, detailing everything she knew. Court documents, the conservatorship inquiry, the fraudulent lien, the HELOC application with Melissa's forged signature, and the text messages, hundreds of them. Derek's communications with Kaylee, with business partners, with attorneys. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, bulletproof. I sat in my workshop, reading through every page, and felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it, everything I needed. The only question remaining was how to use it. July 14th, 2 days before the reunion. Melissa came to visit. She drove out in the late afternoon, after work. I saw her car coming up the driveway and felt my heart clench. My daughter, my only child, the person I was about to hurt more than anyone else in the world. She looked tired when she got out of the car, stressed. There were shadows under her eyes I hadn't noticed before. "Dad," she said, hugging me, "how are you doing?" "I'm fine. Come inside. I'll make coffee." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd sat with Linda for 40 years, planning our life together. "Are you sure you're okay with hosting this?" Melissa asked. "It's a lot of work. We could do it at our place instead." Our place. She still called it that. Even though her name wasn't on the deed. Even though her husband had leveraged it to the breaking point without her knowledge. I kept my face neutral. "I want to do it here," I said. "This is where the family belongs." She smiled, but there was something underneath it, something uncertain. "Derek's been acting strange lately," she said, almost to herself. "Stressed about work, I guess. He won't talk to me about it." I waited. "Sometimes I wonder if—" She trailed off, shook her head. "Never mind. I'm just tired." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Whatever happens," I said, "I want you to know something. I love you. I've always loved you. And nothing will ever change that." She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Dad, is everything okay?" "It will be," I said. "I promise." The morning of the reunion, July 16th, I woke at 5. I made coffee. I sat on my porch. I watched the sun rise over the property I'd lived on my entire life. The fields were green from summer rain. The old oak tree near the workshop was full and heavy with leaves. The barn, weathered but solid, caught the first rays of light. For a moment I felt doubt. What I was about to do would change everything. There would be no going back. No undoing the damage. No pretending things could return to normal. But then I thought about the lien, the forged documents, the affair, the conservatorship inquiry, the text message about the old fool, and the doubt evaporated. Derek had made his choices. He'd been making them for years. He thought he could take what he wanted because he believed I was weak, passive, defeated. He was wrong. And today, he would learn just how wrong. The guests began arriving at noon. I'd hired a catering company, something I'd never done before. Derek had suggested it weeks ago, and I'd agreed, letting him think I couldn't manage without his guidance. The caterers set up tables on the lawn. White tents provided shade. There was a barbecue station with brisket and ribs, a vegetarian option with grilled vegetables and portobello mushrooms, a dessert table loaded with pies and cakes. It looked beautiful, like a magazine spread. Derek arrived at 12:30 with Melissa. He was wearing his khaki shorts and his expensive polo shirt, sunglasses pushed up on his head, looking like he was about to play golf at a country club rather than attend a family gathering at a working farm. He shook my hand with that smile of his. "Looking good, Earl," he said. "I have to admit you've outdone yourself." I had help. Still, nice to see you putting in the effort. He glanced toward my workshop, where the truck sat hidden under its tarp. "Maybe we can finally get that place cleaned out after today. Start fresh, you know?" I smiled. Maybe so. He clapped me on the shoulder and walked away to greet other guests. I watched him go. That's when I noticed the way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. First crack. He was nervous about something. Good. By 2:00, the reunion was in full swing. 53 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins, children, grandchildren. The whole extended Dawson family gathered on my property for the first time in 5 years. The last reunion had been the year before Linda died. After she was gone, I didn't have the heart to organize another one. It felt wrong, somehow, to celebrate family without her there. But Derek had pushed for this one, convinced Melissa it would be good for morale, good for family cohesion. He'd even offered to help with the planning, which mostly meant making suggestions about catering and decorations while I did all the actual work. He had his reasons, of course. He always had his reasons. Derek worked the crowd all afternoon, shaking hands, slapping backs, playing the role of gracious co-host. I watched from a distance, standing near the drink station, sipping lemonade. Margaret found me around 2:15. "He's nervous," she said quietly. "Look at his eyes. He keeps checking his phone. He's expecting something." "What?" "I don't know yet, but I have a guess." She nodded toward the driveway. "Is that the transport company?" I looked. A white pickup truck was pulling through the gate, a large flatbed trailer behind it. "Not yet. That's just equipment for the caterers. The real transport comes at 3. "How will I know when to?" "You'll know. Just watch Derek's face." At 2:30, I saw Derek pull Melissa aside. They stood near the edge of the gathering, apart from the crowd, having what looked like an intense conversation. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see the expression on Melissa's face. Confusion, concern, something that might have been fear. Derek said something. She shook her head. He said something else. She nodded slowly. Then he squeezed her shoulder, a gesture that looked affectionate to anyone watching but had something controlling about it, and walked toward the caterers. Toward the microphone they'd set up for the evening speeches. It was too early for his announcement. He wasn't supposed to speak until 3. Something had changed. Derek tapped the microphone. The feedback whine cut through the conversation noise. "Excuse me, everyone. If I could have your attention for a moment." Conversations stopped. People turned. Derek smiled his most charming smile. "I know we had some remarks planned for later, but I wanted to take a moment now, while we're all together, to talk about something important." I felt Margaret's hand on my arm. Thomas appeared at my other side. Raymond materialized behind me, solid and reassuring. "Go ahead," Thomas said quietly. "Whatever you have planned, now's the time." I shook my head slightly. "Not yet. Let him talk." Derek's speech was masterful in its own way. He talked about family, about legacy, about the importance of adapting to changing times. He gestured toward the property around us, my property, and spoke about potential and opportunity and what we leave for future generations. "This land has been in the Dawson family for 4 generations," he said, "and it's time to think about what comes next. How we can honor that legacy while also building something new." I saw several family members nodding. Others looked uncertain. "I've been working with some investors," Derek continued. "Professionals who specialize in sustainable development. They've shown me what's possible here. How we could transform this property into something that benefits everyone. A planned community, modern homes, shared amenities. A legacy that grows rather than diminishes." He paused for effect. "I'm not talking about selling the family land. I'm talking about evolving it, moving it into the future. And I'm asking all of you, the Dawson family, to be part of that vision." He looked directly at me. "Earl, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I hope you can see that I'm doing this for your family, for your daughter, for your grandchildren when they come. This is about building something better." The crowd was quiet, waiting. Derek expected me to respond, to argue, to look like the stubborn old man standing in the way of progress. But I didn't say anything. I just smiled, and I looked at my watch, 2:57. The flatbed appeared at the end of my driveway at exactly 3 o'clock. It was large, professional. The white truck pulling it had the collector car transit logo on the side, visible from 100 yards away. Derek was still at the microphone, waiting for my response when someone in the crowd called out, "What's that?" Heads turned. The flatbed rolled slowly down the gravel drive. Unhurried, deliberate. The kind of pace that suggested importance, care, value. Derek squinted at the logo on the truck. I watched his face change as recognition set in. "What the?" He lowered the microphone, took a step toward the driveway. The flatbed stopped near my workshop. 2 men in white gloves stepped out. They moved with practiced efficiency, opening the workshop's main doors, revealing what was inside. The 1967 Chevrolet C10, no tarp this time. The truck sat in the afternoon light, its marina blue paint gleaming, chrome polished, every detail perfect. I heard gasps from the crowd. "Holy cow," someone said. Is that a real one?" "That's a 67 stepside. I haven't seen one of those in decades." "It looks brand new, better than new." "Uncle Earl, you restored that yourself?" Derek stood frozen. The microphone hung at his side, forgotten. The transport crew began preparing the loading equipment. Soft straps, padded dollies. The kind of care you use for something precious, very valuable. Margaret leaned close to me. "Earl," she whispered, "what is going on?" I raised my voice, not shouting, just loud enough to carry. "Derek, you wanted to talk about the future of this property, about legacy, about potential." He turned to face me. His expression was strained, uncertain. "So let me tell you about that truck you've been mocking for 6 years." I walked toward the transport. The crowd followed, gravitating toward the spectacle. Derek stayed where he was for a moment, then reluctantly joined the group, drawn by curiosity and something that might have been dread. "This is a 1967 Chevrolet C10 stepside," I said, standing beside the truck. Numbers matching, original engine, transmission, and rear end. Frame-off restoration. I've been working on it since Linda passed. I ran my hand along the fender, feeling the smooth paint under my fingers. Some of you have heard Derek's jokes about Earl's pile of rust, his comments about my worthless hobbies, his suggestions that I should sell off my junk and move into an assisted living facility. Uncomfortable murmurs from the crowd. A few people glanced at Derek, whose face was turning red. What Derek didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, is that this truck has been professionally appraised. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. The current market value is $275,000, but the appraiser thinks it might sell for more at auction. That's where it's going right now. To a specialty auction in Atlanta. Starting bid is $250,000. Silence. Then, $200,000. 75, I said. $275,000 for the pile of rust that Derek's been mocking since he married my daughter. More murmurs, a few low whistles. Someone said, "Earl, I had no idea." Neither did Derek. Derek found his voice. That's impossible. That thing was a rusted hulk. I saw it. It was covered with a tarp. It was worthless. You saw a tarp over a vehicle in my workshop. You assumed you knew what was underneath. You never asked. You never looked. You just assumed. I turned to face him directly. You've been making a lot of assumptions, Derek. About me. About my property. About what you thought you could take. His eyes flickered, just for a second. I don't know what you're talking about. Then let me make it clear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The crowd was silent. Everyone watching. Everyone listening. 6 months ago, an attorney named Patricia Feldman called me. She wanted me to know that someone had contacted her office about establishing conservatorship over me. Someone who wanted to take control of my assets. The crowd went dead quiet. She didn't tell me who it was. She didn't have to. There's only one person who would benefit from having me declared mentally incompetent. Derek took a step back. This is ridiculous. I don't know what you're implying, but 3 weeks ago, a lien was filed against my property. $175,000 for services rendered and materials provided. The claimant is Callahan Development, LLC, your company. I pulled out another document, held it up for everyone to see. Except you've never done any work on my property, Derek. You've never provided any materials. You've never lifted a finger to help me with anything. This lien is fraudulent. It's a crime. That's a mistake. Paperwork error. I can explain. Can you also explain the home equity line of credit you took out against your house? The house that's only in your name? The $200,000 you borrowed using my daughter's forged signature? Melissa made a small sound. I turned to look at her. Her face was white. Dad! What? I have the documents, honey. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out this way. Derek moved. He stepped toward me, hand raised like he was going to grab my arm or shoulder. Thomas intercepted him. Don't, Thomas said quietly. Not a good idea. Derek stopped. His face was twisted with something between rage and panic. This is insane. You're making things up. He turned to Melissa. Babe, come on. Your father is losing it. He's paranoid. He's been planning this for months because he's never liked me. Where's the money, Derek? Melissa's voice was quiet, controlled, but I could hear the tremble underneath. What? The money. Our savings. You told me we had $200,000 saved. You showed me statements. You said we were fine. Where is it? Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Things have been tight with the business. Temporary setbacks. I was going to tell you, but I didn't want you to worry. When? When were you going to tell me about the credit cards? The $140,000 in debt you've been hiding? His face went gray. Who told you that? I did, I said. I hired a private investigator. He's been looking into your finances for 5 months. The debts, the failed business, the conservatorship inquiry, the fraudulent lien. All of it, I paused. And the affair? The word hung in the air like smoke. The murmuring started. Shocked voices, whispered questions. Someone said, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "I knew something was wrong with him." Derek looked around at the crowd, the entire Dawson family watching him, judging him, and something in his expression cracked. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're a bitter old man trying to destroy my marriage because you never liked me." Her name is Kaylee Morrison. She's 28 years old. She works as an administrative assistant. You've been seeing her for over 2 years. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a photograph. I have pictures, hotel records, text messages, everything. Derek's face went from gray to white. "You were supposed to be separated," I continued. "That's what you told her. Divorce papers already filed, just waiting for the right moment to go public." "That's not... I never..." "I have the texts, Derek. I have everything." Melissa made a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a sob. It was something quieter, something deeper. The sound of a person realizing that everything they thought they knew was a lie. She turned away from Derek, walked toward Margaret, who gathered her into her arms without a word. Derek stood alone. The transport crew had paused their work. They were watching along with everyone else. "This isn't over," Derek said. His voice was shaking. "You think you can humiliate me like this? In front of everyone? You'll regret this. I'll sue you for defamation. You'll do what?" I asked. "File another fraudulent lien? Forge more documents?" I stepped closer to him. "Derek, I'm going to say this once, so listen carefully. You are going to sign a settlement agreement that my attorney has already prepared. You are going to relinquish any claim to my property. You are going to agree to an uncontested divorce. You are going to pay restitution for the money you stole from my daughter. And you are going to walk away without taking a single cent more from this family. And if I don't, then the evidence goes to the district attorney's office. Fraud, forgery, identity theft. You'll be facing criminal charges before the week is out." He stared at me. "You're bluffing." "I've never bluffed in my life. Ask anyone who knows me." The crowd was shifting. People were talking. The spell of Derek's charm was broken, probably forever. My cousin Raymond, who had been standing nearby, walked up to stand beside me. "Earl," he said, "you want me to escort Mr. Callahan off the property?" Derek looked at Raymond, at Thomas, at the ring of Dawson family members who were closing in around him, their expressions ranging from disgust to anger to cold satisfaction. "This is assault," Derek said. "You can't physically..." "Nobody's touched you," Raymond said. "Yet." Derek's face went through several expressions: rage, fear, calculation. He was looking for an angle, a way out, a strategy. He found none. Finally, he settled on something that looked almost like dignity. "Fine," he said. "Fine. I'll sign your papers. But this isn't over, Earl. You think you've won something here. You've just made an enemy, and I don't forget." "Neither do I." I gestured toward the driveway. Your car is parked over there. I suggest you use it. He went. Not quietly. He muttered threats under his breath, said something about lawyers and lawsuits, but he went. We watched his BMW kick up gravel as it sped away from my property. And then, in the silence that followed, I turned to the transport crew. Sorry about the interruption. You can continue loading. The lead technician nodded. No problem, sir. We see all kinds of things in this job, but I have to say, this is a first. I watched them work. Careful, professional, treating my truck with the respect it deserved. Margaret appeared beside me. Earl Dawson, she said quietly. I had no idea you had this in you. Neither did he. How long have you been planning this? I thought about it. About 5 months, since I found out what he was doing. And the truck? How long have you been working on that? 7 years. She shook her head slowly. You know what Linda would say right now? I smiled. She'd say I took too long. She always said I was too patient. She was right. We stood together, watching the truck being secured onto the flatbed. What happens now? Margaret asked. Now I go find my daughter, and I try to help her pick up the pieces. Melissa was sitting on the porch swing, the same swing where she used to sit as a child, watching fireflies on summer evenings. Her face was streaked with tears, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was just empty. I sat down beside her, didn't say anything. For a long time, we just swayed together, the way we had when she was 7 years old and scared of thunderstorms, the way we had when she was 14 and heartbroken over her first boyfriend, the way we had when Linda was in the hospital, and neither of us could find words. Finally, she spoke. How long have you known? About the affair? Since April. And you didn't tell me. I wanted to. Every day I wanted to. But I knew that if I came to you with accusations and suspicions, he'd twist it around. Make you doubt me instead of him. I needed proof. She nodded slowly. The financial stuff, the forged documents, the lien against your property, all of it. All of it. How bad is it? I took a breath. Bad. He's been draining your accounts for years. The house is leveraged to the breaking point. There's $140,000 in credit card debt that you're technically responsible for because some of the accounts are joint. But I never signed. He forged your signature. On the HELOC, on some of the credit applications. I have handwriting analysis that proves it. She was quiet for a moment. What do I do? You divorce him. My attorney, Patricia Feldman, she's already prepared the paperwork. Uncontested divorce. He walks away with nothing. You keep the house or sell it and keep whatever equity is left. And the criminal charges against him will give you leverage if he tries to fight. Criminal charges? Fraud, forgery, filing false liens. He's facing serious prison time if any of this goes to trial. Melissa looked at me. You were going to put him in prison? If I had to, I'd still prefer not to. It would drag everything out, make it public, turn your life into a circus. But if he doesn't cooperate, you'd do it. To protect you? Yes, without hesitation. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. The truck, it's really worth that much? More, probably, at the right auction. And you're selling it? Yes. Why? I know how much that project meant to you. I know it was your therapy after Mom died. I took her hand. It was always meant for you, honey. I was going to leave it to you in my will. An inheritance he couldn't touch, because it would be your separate property. But now I think you need a fresh start more than you need an old truck. The money from the sale will be yours. Directly. Something he can never claim, never touch, never use against you. A foundation for whatever comes next. Her face crumpled. Dad, whatever happens, you'll be okay. You'll have resources, you'll have family, you'll have time to figure out what you want. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have listened to you. I should have seen who he really was. You wanted to believe in him. There's no shame in that. Love makes us vulnerable. That's not a weakness. It's what makes us human. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. We sat together as the sun began to set, watching the shadows lengthen across the property. Dad? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For protecting me even when I didn't know I needed protecting. I squeezed her hand. That's what fathers do. The transport pulled away at 4:15. I watched it disappear down the driveway, my truck secured on the back, heading toward an auction where strangers would bid on my labor and my memories. Part of me felt sad, but a bigger part felt something else. Relief, pride. The satisfaction of knowing that I'd done what needed to be done. The reunion continued, though the mood had changed. People gathered in small groups, talking in hushed voices, processing what they'd witnessed. The barbecue was still warm, the desserts still sweet, but everyone knew that something significant had happened. Derek's schemes had been exposed, his power had been broken, and the Dawson family had been protected. Several relatives came up to me throughout the evening. Some offered congratulations. Some offered support. A few apologized for not seeing through Derek sooner. My Uncle Henry, 83 years old, grabbed my arm as I walked past. Earl, he said, your father would be proud of you today. You think so? I know so. He always said you were the patient one, the one who thought things through. Today, you proved him right. I thanked him, moved on. But his words stayed with me. Late that night, after the last guests had gone, I sat alone in my workshop. The space where the truck had been was empty now. 7 years of work, driving away on a flatbed. I'd built something in this space. Not just a vehicle, something more. A project that had given me purpose when I needed it most. A creation that had kept me sane through the grief of losing Linda. And now it was gone. But it had served a greater purpose. It had funded my daughter's freedom. It had exposed a predator. It had protected my family's legacy. Linda would have understood. She would have been proud. A week later, the auction happened. Robert Whitfield called me with the results. Earl, he said, you're not going to believe this. Try me. Final sale price was $328,000. I had to sit down. $328,000 plus buyer's premium. There were 3 serious bidders in the room. It turned into a war. $328,000. The provenance you assembled, the restoration quality, the numbers matching documentation. It all came together. This was one of the best examples anyone had seen in years. I was quiet for a moment. That money goes to Melissa, I said. Directly to her. Set up whatever account you need. You're sure? That's a lot of money to give away. I'm sure. It was always meant for her. I just accelerated the timeline. Minus our commission, you're looking at about $290 net. That's life-changing money, Earl. That's the point. 2 weeks later, Derek signed the settlement agreement. Patricia Feldman handled the negotiations. It wasn't complicated. Derek's legal position was hopeless. His choices were simple. sign the papers and walk away clean, or face criminal prosecution. He chose to sign. The terms were everything I'd demanded. He relinquished any claim to my property. He withdrew the fraudulent lien. He agreed to an uncontested divorce with no spousal support. He accepted responsibility for the debts incurred through forgery and fraud. He walked away with nothing. The divorce was finalized in September. Melissa kept the house, the only thing of value that hadn't been mortgaged into oblivion. She refinanced, got Derek's name off the deed, and started rebuilding. It wasn't easy. The financial damage took months to untangle. But with the money from the truck sale, nearly $300,000, she had options. She could take her time, figure out what she wanted, build a life on her own terms. A year later, Melissa invited me to dinner. She'd renovated the house, new paint, new furniture, new energy. It didn't look like the same place Derek had bought. It looked like her place now, warm, comfortable, full of personality that had been suppressed during her marriage. She met me at the door with a smile, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen since before she met Derek. "Come in, Dad. I have something to show you." She led me through the house, out the back door, to the yard, where a workshop was being built. A contractor was putting the finishing touches on the structure. Concrete floor, high ceilings, big windows that let in natural light. "I thought you might need a new project," Melissa said. "A place to work when you're visiting. Maybe another truck to restore." I stood there, looking at the workshop, at the carefully planned space, the electrical outlets, the built-in storage, and I felt something catch in my throat. "Melissa, you gave me everything, Dad. The money from the truck, the protection from Derek, a chance to start over." She took my hand. "Let me give you something too." I couldn't speak. She hugged me. For a long time, we just stood there. 6 months after that, Melissa started dating again. His name was Michael, high school history teacher. Quiet, kind, completely unlike Derek in every way. The first time she brought him to my house, I watched him carefully. He shook my hand and looked around the property with genuine appreciation. "Beautiful place," he said. "How many acres?" 40. "Wow, you're lucky to have land like this. They don't make it anymore." I studied his face, his eyes, the way he looked at Melissa. "You're right," I said. "They don't." He didn't ask about selling. He didn't make jokes about my workshop. He didn't condescend or dismiss or manipulate. He was just normal. After dinner, Melissa walked me to my truck. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think he sees you," I said. "Really sees you. Not what you can give him. Not what he can take from you. Just you." She smiled. "I think so too. That's what matters, honey. That's all that matters." The following summer, they got married. Small ceremony. Melissa's backyard. 30 guests. The workshop I'd helped her build was visible in the background, already full of projects we were working on together. I gave a toast. I talked about love, about trust, about the importance of choosing people who see you clearly and treat you with respect. I didn't mention Derek. I didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew what Melissa had been through, and everyone in that room could see how far she'd come. When I finished speaking, she raised her glass to me. "To my father," she said, "the most patient man I've ever known." I still live on the same 40 acres where I was born. The workshop Melissa built for me has become a second home. I've started a new project, a 1955 Ford F-100 I found in a barn near Knoxville. Rough shape, lots of rust, years of work ahead. Exactly what I wanted. Sometimes, late in the evening, I sit on my porch and think about everything that happened. The investigation, the confrontation, the long, careful process of protecting my family from someone who wanted to tear us apart. I think about Derek, somewhere in Georgia now, according to the rumor mill. I wonder if he ever understood what went wrong, if he ever realized that his biggest mistake wasn't the fraud or the forgery or the affair. His biggest mistake was assuming I was powerless. He looked at an old man in overalls, living on a farm, surrounded by what he thought was junk, and he decided I was beneath him. Irrelevant, disposable. He was wrong. Here's what I learned from all of it. Never underestimate someone just because they don't look like a threat. Never assume that silence means weakness, and never ever mess with a man's family. Because you don't know what he's been building in that workshop. You don't know what he's been planning while you were busy feeling superior. You don't know what he's capable of when you push him far enough. Derek found out the hard way. At a family reunion, surrounded by 50 witnesses, watching a truck he'd mocked for years get loaded onto a specialty transport, bound for an auction where it would sell for more than his entire net worth. That look on his face, the moment when he finally understood. I'll remember it forever. 2 years after the reunion, I got a phone call. It was Walter Chen. "Earl," he said, "thought you might want to know. Derek's in trouble again." "What kind of trouble?" "Same kind. He married someone in Atlanta. Wealthy family. Started running the same schemes. Financial manipulation, hidden debts, fraudulent documents. Let me guess, they caught him. Her brother caught him, hired a private investigator, not me, someone local, and found everything. Derek's facing federal charges now. Wire fraud, interstate commerce violations. The FBI is involved." I was quiet for a moment. His victims, are they okay? Better than they would have been. The family had resources, lawyers. They're going to be fine. Good. Earl, I know you probably don't feel much sympathy for him, but he's looking at real prison time. 5 to 10 years, probably. I thought about Melissa, about the life she'd rebuilt, about the wedding in the backyard and the workshop full of projects and the smile that had finally come back to her face. "No," I said. "I don't feel much sympathy." "Fair enough. Thanks for letting me know, Walter." "Anytime, Earl. Take care of yourself." I never told Melissa about Derek's federal charges. She didn't need to know. She'd moved on, built a new life, found real happiness. The past was the past. But I thought about it sometimes, about the pattern, about Derek's inability or unwillingness to change. Some people learn from their mistakes. Others just find new victims. Derek was the second kind. Eventually, the system caught up with him. That's how it usually goes. Not always as quickly as we'd like, but eventually. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just inevitable. Melissa gave birth to her first child the following spring. A daughter, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. They named her Linda, after my wife. After the woman who taught me patience and love and the importance of protecting the people you care about. The day Linda was born, I drove to the hospital and held my granddaughter for the first time. She was small and perfect and completely unaware of everything that had happened before she existed. I thought about all of it. The investigation, the confrontation, the years of planning and patience and careful work. None of it mattered now. What mattered was this moment, this tiny person, this new beginning. Michael stood beside me, arm around Melissa, watching. "You okay, Earl?" he asked. I nodded. "Just thinking about the future," I said, "and how glad I am she gets to be part of it." There's a plaque on the wall of my workshop now. Melissa had it made for my 70th birthday. It says, "Patience is not passive waiting, it's active building." For Dad, who taught me that strength doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like waiting for the right moment. I look at that plaque every morning when I walk into the workshop to work on the Ford F-100, and I think about Linda. Both Lindas now. And I think about the 40 acres my great-grandfather bought more than a century ago. And I think about Derek, probably sitting in a federal prison somewhere, finally facing consequences he couldn't talk his way out of. And I smile. My name is Earl Raymond Dawson. I'm 70 years old. I've lived on the same property my entire life. I've worked with my hands since I was a boy. I've built things and fixed things and made things better. I'm not rich by most standards, not famous, not powerful. But I have everything that matters. A family that loves me, a home that I own, a workshop full of projects, a granddaughter named after my wife, and a story to tell, one that reminds people that the quiet ones, the patient ones, the people who get dismissed and underestimated and mocked, we're watching, we're listening, we're building, and when the time is right, we're ready. Derek Callahan found that out the hard way. At a family reunion, surrounded by my whole family, watching the truck he'd mocked for 6 years get loaded onto a specialty transport, his face, his silence, his complete and total defeat. I'll remember that moment forever. But not because of him, because of what it meant. That I'd done my job, that I'd protected my daughter, that everything I'd built, not just the truck, but the life, the values, the patience, had been worth it. The Ford F-100 is coming along nicely. It's going to take another 3 or 4 years, but that's fine. I'm not in a hurry. Linda, my granddaughter, visits on Saturday afternoons now. She's 3 years old, and she loves to help by handing me wrenches and asking questions about how engines work. "Why you fix trucks, Grandpa?" "Because I like making things, taking something that's broken and making it work again." "Like fixing boo-boos?" I smile. "Yes, exactly like fixing boo-boos." She nods seriously and hands me another wrench, even though it's the wrong size. Good helper, Grandpa. The best helper. Last month, someone at the hardware store recognized me. I was buying oil for the F-100 when a young man approached me. "Excuse me, sir, are you Earl Dawson?" I tensed. Old habits. "Who's asking?" "My name's Ben. I heard about what happened. What you did to protect your daughter from that con artist." He paused. "My grandmother went through something similar. My uncle was trying to get conservatorship over her, trying to take her house. She didn't know what to do." "What happened?" "She fought back, hired a lawyer, gathered evidence. Eventually, he backed off." Ben smiled. "She told me she'd heard about your story and it gave her courage. She said if an old farmer could take down a slick con man, she could handle her own nephew." I didn't know what to say. "Anyway," Ben continued, "I just wanted to thank you for standing up, for showing people that it's possible to fight back and win." He shook my hand and walked away. I stood there for a long moment, holding my oil, thinking about his grandmother, about all the people out there dealing with their own Dereks, and I realized that the story mattered. Not just for my family, for everyone. That's why I'm telling you this. Not because I want recognition or praise or sympathy, but because I want you to know that it's possible. If someone is trying to take what's yours, if someone is manipulating you, gaslighting you, making you feel crazy, you're not powerless. You can fight back. It takes patience. It takes evidence. It takes allies, but it can be done. I know. I did it. The 1967 Chevrolet C10 Stepside sold for $328,000. It was a beautiful truck. I miss it sometimes. But I don't regret selling it. Not for a second. Because that truck bought my daughter her freedom. It bought my granddaughter a stable home. It bought my family peace. Some things are worth more than money. But sometimes you need the money to protect the things that are truly valuable. If you're listening to this and something resonates, if you know someone like Derek, or you're dealing with someone who's trying to take what's yours, I want to leave you with one final thought. You have more power than you think. Be patient. Be strategic. Gather your evidence. Build your case. Don't let emotion drive your decisions. And when the time is right, when you've done the work and you're certain of your facts, don't hesitate. Stand up, speak out, and watch them learn exactly how wrong they were about you. My name is Earl Raymond Dawson. I'm 70 years old, and I'm just getting started. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, if you've been through something similar, or you know someone who has, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, the pile of rust in that old man's workshop? Sometimes it's worth more than you could ever imagine. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never underestimate the quiet ones. Until next time. 5 years later. 5 years after the reunion, I was working in my workshop when Melissa called. Dad, are you sitting down? I'm always sitting down. What's up? The F-100, the truck you've been restoring. Robert Whitfield called me. Robert? Why would he call you? Because he knows you never check your voicemail. I could hear her smiling through the phone. He has a buyer. A serious buyer, someone who wants to commission the truck before it's even finished. Commission. They want you to complete the restoration to your specifications, and they'll pay whatever it costs, plus a premium for your work. I sat back. How much of a premium? $400,000. The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. 400. Dad? Are you okay? I'm fine. Just surprised. It's because of the C10 the story got out. The auction house has been telling people about the guy who restored a truck to Concours condition and used it to take down his con artist son-in-law. Apparently, you're famous in collector car circles. I didn't know what to say. Dad, what do you want me to tell Robert? I thought about the F-100, about the 3 years of work I'd already put into it, about the plans I had for the restoration. I thought about Linda, my granddaughter, 5 years old now, already asking if she could help for real, instead of just handing me wrenches. I thought about Melissa, about Michael, about the family they'd built. Tell him no, I said. No? Dad, that's $400,000. I know. You could retire. Really retire. Travel. Do whatever you want. I'm already doing what I want. I picked up the wrench. The truck isn't for sale. It's for Linda. For when she's old enough to learn how to restore it herself. Melissa was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. You're the most stubborn man I've ever known. I prefer patient. That too. She paused. I love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. The F-100 isn't for sale. It's for Linda, for my granddaughter, for the next generation. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge, not money, not even justice. Family, legacy, building something that lasts. Derek Callahan is serving 8 years in federal prison. I don't think about him much anymore. He's a chapter that's closed. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm sitting on my porch watching the stars, I remember the look on his face when that flatbed rolled in. The confusion turning to recognition. The recognition turning to fear. The fear turning to understanding. He finally got it. Finally understood what he was dealing with. Too late. I'm 72 now, still living on the same 40 acres, still working in my workshop, still teaching my granddaughter about engines and restoration and the satisfaction of making something with your own hands. It's a good life. Better than I deserve, probably. But I'm grateful for every day of it. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. The people who underestimate you are giving you an advantage. Use it. Patience isn't weakness. It's strategy. Evidence beats emotion. Every time. And the old man in overalls working on his pile of rust? He might just be the most dangerous person in the room. Never forget that. This is Earl Raymond Dawson, Williamson County, Tennessee. Still building, still patient, still ready. And my granddaughter just learned how to change the oil. The future's looking pretty good from here.